to introduce Jim, get back to this one. I first met Jim at a Maya Memorial Trust review meeting, and it was interesting because I'd been hearing about Jim Walls for months and months and months, and it was one of those delightful experiences when you finally meet the person that you've heard about so much. I've since met Jim a couple of times. He was here at our summit, and those of you who live in Talon, anybody live in Talon here? Well, you guys, you should know Jim because Jim was here at the Talent Workshop, which was organized to help stimulate renewable energy in Talon. So we've been very excited with learning about what's happening up in Lakeview, and we wanted Jim to talk about it this evening. As I was doing a bit of poking around in relation to Jim, I found a lot about Jim from the web. I'm sure it's all accurate. But Sustainable Northwest, which is an organization which is known throughout the region, was involved in establishing or helping Jim establish the Lake County Resources Initiative. And I was just reading the website, and they described Jim in this way. They said, some people have described Jim Walls as the shepherd of Lakeview's bold new future. And so Jim has a lot to live up to this evening. Without further ado, I'll let Jim talk to you about how it is that Lake County is becoming a national leader when it comes to developing renewable energy and becoming nearly towards 100% renewable off the fossil fuels, which is something we're all very much in favor of. So, without more ado, Jim Walls. Thanks a lot for coming, Jim.
Thank you, Alan. And I've got a pretty good voice, so if this thing's too close, this doesn't work, we'll just get out of the way. I do, as age as we all get there, have a saliva problem, so if I don't drink water, I can't talk, and there's been many in the audience that applauded that. I said that was good. The shepherd of Lake County, what a big deal. My youngest son, when he was in the first grade, and I worked for the Resource Conservation and Development District as an RCD coordinator under the Soil Conservation Service.
Could you use the mic?
Yeah. Oh. And I was working for the Natural Resource Conservation Service as an RCD coordinator, and which meant I was a facilitator, cheerleader, and all those good things for community projects. And the first grade teacher, when he got around to my son, says, "What does your dad do?" And he said, "Well, we can't quite figure out. We think he might work for the CIA." So they had a hard time figuring that out. I'd like to go through
Yeah, it should do that. Whoops. No, but we're on there. We're still on. We're still on my
presentation. So, and I'll take you through what we've gone through in Lake County to try and be a net exporter of renewable energy and be able to actually make more renewable energy than we use and export it as an economic development tool. And then also, what does that mean for climate change and stuff? And it all started when I did, as mentioned, was actually working for Sustainable Northwest and came to Lakeview to start Lake County Resources Initiative and work on forest issues. And when I came here, I was working as an advisor to the University of Washington and then also Chad Oliver at Yale on forest carbon. And I said, I want to know, with all the small diameter material we need to remove from our forests to get them so they're back to natural fire conditions and don't crown all the time, what are we going to use that? What's the economic benefit? And they said biomass. So we entered into, I raised the funds, because my organization is a nonprofit. We raised the funds, hired CH2M Hill to do a business plan and preliminary engineering for a biomass plant, a 29.8 megawatt plant in Lakeview. You use all that little forest material that needed to come out from the crowded forest to make them so that they could take natural fire events again. And that really headed it up. And it got us to thinking, wow, we got one renewable energy source. What other sources do we have? And we're on the edge of the desert. We're in on the east side. We got sunlight. We got geothermal. came down and we got everything but Ocean Way that we could promote. And I said, well, climate change, maybe in 50 years we might be there. So we could do it all. So we formed the Lake County Renewable Energy Working Group. And I modeled it after I was on the governor's Renewable Energy Working Group, Governor Kilnogowski's. And so we modeled it after that and went forward. This just shows what the construction, the Oregon Economic Development Department did this, what the jobs and stuff were. So we started out, and how are we going to make that possible? We're 78% government land in Lake County. Who's going to come in and invest $98 million to build a biomass plant when at that time all there was lawsuits on federal lands? It's not a very wise investment. I still don't know why they thought of it, but we tried to make it the best condition that they could. So we asked the governor to make it an Oregon Solution project, and he did. And then we developed a framework for implementing fuel reductions on 495,000 acres that was approved, and part of the working group, in fact, the head of the working group was an individual from the Wilderness Society that headed up that committee. And the second one in place was from the Defenders of Wildlife. Then we had a representative from the local sawmill. So we brought this group and we agreed on how to manage that 495,000 acres, given some assurance that we wouldn't be winding up in court all the time. Then we developed a 20-year supply MOU between BLM and the Forest Service, and the local mill and the county commissioner signed on, the town signed on, etc., for that supply. Now, a memorandum of agreement is nothing legal in a court. I still don't know why they wanted to invest $90 million after that, but it did give them that insurance. They felt with the agreements we had with the environmental community and this type of thing that they could move forward on that. And then the last thing we did was we assisted the local sawmill, the Collins Company, in getting a 10-year stewardship contract, the first one in the Pacific Northwest for supply off federal lands, off that 495,000 acres. That allowed them to go invest $6.8 million into a new small diameter saw plant, and they built that. And I do want to talk about this. The power plant, they bought the land, they put $10 million into building it, and natural gas prices went down. And California passed a law where if you were going to meet their California portfolio, renewable energy portfolio standard, the plant had to be built in California. Well, the plant was 25 miles from California, but it wasn't in California. So with those two things colliding, it went on the shelf. I will talk later. It has been in place with a plant that's going to start construction this year. It's a $200 million cellulosic jet fuel plant. It's being built for the Navy and have contracts with Alaska and FedEx and one other company to supply jet fuel from cellulosic material. And it'll use the same volume that the biomass. So everything we did for the biomass worked. All this stuff worked to help track that second one along. And they didn't need the credits or the energy because it's not an energy plant, it's a jet fuel plant. I do want to mention though, when we start talking large biomass, 26.9 megawatt, look at around the state at the small biomass. You look at the Sisters High School has one. Burns Hospital, they tell me from that plant that little biomass plant is saving them $80,000 a year in cost, electrical and heat. And then Wallowa Resources has an industrial park that's all heated with their small biomass. So just because we looked at large, you don't have to do that. There's a lot of opportunities to do it. Well, like I said, that got us thinking about everything we needed, what could we do with all the other renewables? And so we started to do a plan. And we had the potential of 26 million kilowatt hours of electrical production of known projects that were in the planning stage. And we only needed to supply our own energy needs only 48 million. So we knew we had a surplus, and so we developed a strategy, wrote it up, published it, about tracting industry so that we would ship out, because we had line capacity, going interstate line capacity, we could send out renewables and make money. Send out electricity, sell it, money comes in. That's economic development. Just in the geothermal realm, we have over 100 megawatts that have done feasibilities. Only one has been built today. It's a 2.5 megawatt plant in Paisley. It was done with our local co-op, energy co-op. Unfortunately, them and Pacific Power, and I don't understand why, because PERP is pretty clear, but they're in a lawsuit now. Because Pacific Power kept not purchasing the power, which they're supposed to under PERPA. But whatever that lawsuit is, they can't tell me, the lawyer, that's confidential stuff, they say, you know. But that's the sad part, that it's up there ready to go online, and it's all finished and done. The Crump Geyser, which would be 30 megawatt, they finished the drilling of the re-injection well and then stopped. And there was some financial things with natural gas in 2008, an economic crisis in the country. They filed Chapter 11, and they're going through that. But we hope that picks up. And then there's other ones out there that other companies have identified that will be able to go. The resources there. It's just the financial and getting them in a favorable condition to go online. We started another Oregon Solution project with the Governor, Brad Winters, our county commissioner. We have a backscatter radar site out in Christmas Valley. It was built in the 70s as to detect incoming Russian missiles. It was a missile site, a radar site. They built it, they tested it one day, and the next day they mothballed it. That was all in 2 days after they got it all done. It's been sitting there for years. Well, military does everything in redundancy. Everything's doubled. They have two 120 kW lines coming into that facility. It sits in the middle of the desert with all the sunshine in the world. So we started working on a project to get solar there. Currently there, they do have a 157 kilowatt solar system going, but we're looking at over 2 megawatts that'll eventually go on that site because there's over 1,800 acres there. We also learned that working with the military, Department of Defense, because we had to get land transferred from the Air Force to the National Guard. And those are long processes. They don't quite meet the timelines we thought we could set. So it would take a while. So, but that's good. It's a good site. By the way, today we have 111 megawatts in the planning stage of solar in Lake County. 7 are up and running, and another 5 is going to go on this next summer, and then another 2.5 will be coming on this next summer that are going into the building stage as soon as the snow leaves. Well, that sort of did a flip-flop on the biomass. It went on the shelf, our big cornerstone of our big plan to become a net exporter, and all of a sudden solar started popping up. And the county commissioners came to me and they go, Jim, that doesn't create jobs. It creates construction jobs, but permanent jobs, and it doesn't. It doesn't create what a geothermal plant would create or a biomass plant for long-term jobs. But I started thinking hard about that. I didn't want this to fall through. What benefit could I show the county? Well, I looked at, we're 78% government land that don't pay taxes. It's the other 22% that supports Lake County. So what would impact? So I asked the Department of Revenue to figure that out on one of the solar sites that was coming up. And that solar site, which was less than a 2 megawatt, would generate over $68,000 in taxes a year. And that would all, and then they divide it out to the districts where that would go. So all those districts, taxing districts, would get a piece of that pie. And that does create jobs, whether it's the library, the hospital district, you know, on and on, the fire district, whatever. It does provide that. Now, when you got 111 megawatts coming in, that's a significant total out of all that that will be brought in and divided up between them. They have made agreements now so that they can tell their investors to go to a straight tax with no tax credits by the state on solar that you can apply for. And that's a straight $7,000 a megawatt. And then they don't get their renewable energy tax credits. But they get that, so that and then their investors know what the taxes are going to be and what it's easier to financially plan it, having that flat tax. But the county commissioners have to approve each project for them to get that, which ours has. This is just the jobs that those different projects that we had in our plan would create, and then the ones that we retained. There's a lot of retaining of jobs with building like a biomass plant, keeping loggers that were in the woods doing other types of work and getting that small diameter. So this is again done by the Washington Economic Development Department, now Business Oregon. This shows the economic benefit of all those that are in the planning stage. Our bill came to over $38 million annually in benefits to the community. What an economic development tool. And I want to let you think about, 2008 was bad for the world economy. We have been experiencing exactly what the world did in Lake County in 2008 for 20 years. In fact, it was going on a 30-year decade that we've been experiencing that kind of economic downturn out there. We're very remote. When you do economic development, you can't talk proximity to market, I think sometimes, I like it that we're 100 plus miles from the Walmart. That's fine with me, but I did stop tonight on the way in, But, or McDonald's or whatever, but we're a long ways, our road structures are not good, our railroad structure's not good, no major airport. So doing on-time delivery and those types of things that industry wants for development, that's not gonna happen in Lakeview. So we suffered for quite a few years. We went from 6 sawmills down to 1 through the late 80s and through the 90s. I do also want to show that we worked on homes and businesses too as we did this, not just big production. And this is one of the sources that I think too many people don't look at, and that's ground source heat pumps. In Lake County, you bury a pipe, 1.5-inch pipe, 5.5 feet in the ground, and it's easy to remember. You put Lysol type material in it, it will take the heat from the earth at 55 degrees year-round. So then you have a booster at the end. It's old technology. It's been around for ages. This shows one, and it's very cost efficient if you can lay a horizontal pipe. If you got to dig wells, then the cost becomes quite high and prohibitive if you got to go vertical. If you can go horizontal with your pipes, then you can do it. We did it one in town there in the top left corner in a gravel driveway. We laid the pipes and did that. I was lucky enough to hire during all this renewable energy Bob Rogers, who co-founded the Renewable Energy Center at OIT, and he retired. So I hired him as my engineer, and that's the brains behind all this and how this got done and stuff. And then the bottom one here, the bottom one shows a coil system because they didn't have enough land. It's not as efficient as a straight pipe on a horizontal, but it does work. It worked here for the straw bale house. They heat with wood and the ground source heat pump. And what I like about ground source heat pumps is you turn the switch in the summer, it takes the heat out of the house and puts it back into the earth. So you get both air conditioning and heating. And like I said, it's one of the oldest technologies around and very cost effective. And I like to use this one. Ball State just finished their ground source heat pump system 2 years ago, I think it was. They drilled well over 200 and some vertical holes, which I told you wasn't economical. But if you get the right circumstances, they're heating and cooling over, I think it's near 50 different buildings. And they're saving $2 million a year. Why can't every campus have one of these types of things? Why does Texas, and I don't know if it's still today, at one time required every new high school to have a ground source heat pump? You got a football field. You can lay them horizontal. We've done designs for our high schools. They haven't implemented them yet because it takes money, but you can do those type of things. It's very cost effective. Now, Southern Oregon College had plans, and I don't know where they're at, to do a biomass plant. And I think that's great because you get an Ashland Forest.
You mean
have
SOU?
Overdose Forest. Huh?
You mean SOU?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm back to SOC. I went to SOC back in the 60s. So it was still SOC to me. Sorry about that. Yeah. And, but every school could have some of those type savings. Either the small biomass plants like I showed in the beginning, or something like this on a larger scale, like the ground source heat pump, using the football field, the track field, because you've got plenty of ground to use at a high school. We also did a geothermal, the town did, to our 4 schools and our hospital that's been completely remodeled. They are now all on ground source heat. The hospital's saving $100,000 a year in heating costs, And the schools, depending on the size, it depends 80 to 100 on which school you're talking about. So we got 4 schools in the hospital now, all on a geothermal heating district in Lakeview. And then some of the other neat things that I love is, if you've never seen a radiant, the radiant tubing for solar, and then this shows on the left shows the floors with the grooves in it. You lay your pipes in, and your solar heats the hot water and heats the floors. You ever get up in the morning on a floor that's heated by solar? That's nice. That's really nice. And my son's building a log home, 2-story home. They'll have all that in Seattle. And really nice. So there's all kinds of neat uses that you can utilize in your home, in your businesses to save money. And Ford Family, we are a nonprofit. The Ford Family Foundation funded a lot of our work. And one day they asked, they go, Jim, prove to us what you've done economically for that community. I go, wow, I can go talk to Tim. He's paying his daughter's storm fees every month from the savings from his ground source heat pump at his home. I know that much. Well, that's not quite proof, that's anecdotal type information. So they hired an economist, PhD economist, to come in and study 22 of the projects that we implemented, and primarily in the Lakeview area of Lake County. Those 22, over the life of the equipment, will save $1.9 million in savings. Now, our 2 major heat sources for heat in Lake County are wood, and we're under a PM.25 restriction for wood particles, so wood stoves aren't good. And the other one is fuel oil. And you can imagine, remember when barrel oil's down now, but when fuel oil was $4 a gallon, that was expensive. And this was when it was a little over 3 that he did this analysis. But those shows, and it shows the different projects there that he studied and what each one saved. And it came out they were saving about 120, those 22 I think it was, projects, $125,000 a year. So that was a little around 5,000, a little over 5,000 a year per project on an average. That's when you can save a homeowner or a business $400 a month. Just think what you're doing to their bottom line. It's huge. And so the opportunities for this is tremendous. And I like to show both sides of the big electrical production side because it's neat, but I like to show this side too. Because I think this makes a bigger difference in your community than anything when you can do these types of things. So then we said, wow, we must be doing something with carbon. What are we doing? So we decided to do a plan to see where we were at. It came out that for fossil fuel, and that would be the abiotic emissions from carbon dioxide, we would be able to, if we implemented everything that was in that plan, 98% offset of all, that includes trucks, cars, the whole works that we calculate. The local fuel company wouldn't give us the sales they have every year. We're going to be bad if we calculated that. So we had to go through formulas and go to different universities and how do you calculate that for your community and do that. We did that. So that came out to over 267,000 tons of savings a year in carbon dioxide. And I think that's very good. To reach 100% from 98 is no stretch. Because I said we had 111 solars in planning and 7 going. When we did the plan, we only had about 10 in the plan, 10 megawatts. So we do 110, we're way over that then when we get there. Whoops. I do want to talk about another thing about carbon savings that really fits into the wood products industry. That this research has been going on for over 15 years that I know of. As an advisor at the University of Washington at the College of Forestry, I was on Bruce Lipke's team that was working on this called the Quorum, and Chad Oliver, who went to Yale University, the head of their environmental and forestry department at Yale. And they could show that the substitution, and I don't know if the papers are accurate, I haven't done that research, but some papers claim that construction material is 40% of all the emissions in the world from carbon dioxide. That's making a concrete, steel, etc. Now, if you could offset that with wood, what would that mean? But wood never had a big enough impact that you could build, you couldn't build a skyscraper out of wood. So you couldn't get the impact to offset steel and stuff. Plus, wood is not as bad to heat as steel is. The amount to heat steel or brick is tremendous in a building and all that. They just a few years ago came out with cross-laminated timbers, and they can now do 30-story buildings out of timber. And what's amazing about cross-laminated timber, this is big glue lamp type material. And they build whole walls with it. And they've done up to 30 stories now in British Columbia, in Switzerland, and other places. And Oregon State's going to rebuild P.V. Hall at the Forestry Department out of this material. And D.R. Johnson Sawmill is being refitted now to be a product maker of this. When you look at the savings in carbon, when you start eliminating steel and concrete and brick from the construction material, it is huge. And what's neat, people go, well, wood, it's more fireproof than steel. You remember the Twin Towers collapsed because steel melted. You need air to make wood burn. And since it's a glue lamp, there's no air. So it will scorch the outside, but burn in, it doesn't do it. So, and then it's more earthquake proof too, because it's got movement, it can move. So it's not as solid as a steel or a concrete building or brick. So it's got movement to it too. There's a workshop coming up for the state that they're having. I don't remember the date. But anyway, it's a great new opportunity and a great new opportunity for carbon savings to do this. And I point this out because I look at renewable energy, this type of thing, and preventing these fires that crown by doing forest underthinning. The Biscuit fire emitted more carbon dioxide than all the automobiles in 1 year in the state of Oregon. It's huge, and the fires are getting worse with climate change. They're building. And that's multiple things, from fire suppression to high grading the logs in the early years and logging and stuff. A lot of things cause that, but that's where we're at today. Overdense forests that have too much lateral fuels that go through. So if we can start using this material, eliminating those fires, using renewable energy, these things, these are all things that we could do economically, and what we think maybe offset 30 to 40% of the emissions in this country, and do it on an economically positive way. I just wanted to show you also, you're out there and you're doing these thinnings to reduce the fuels in the forest. You build these slash piles, and then you light them afire. And what does that do? Well, this shows on the left what pile burning does, open burning, and then on the right shows what it would be in a biomass or a contained vessel that you burn that same material. The emission savings are huge with that. This was a study done by the University of California and Plumas County Air Control Authority. I'm not sure that's exactly Plumas County Air Quality Control. So what I did, this is on a flash drive, and I didn't have a whole bunch of them. I have a total, with the one I got in there with Al, I've got 4 more of these. And that has that university study on it. It has the study on the cross-laminated timber, peer-reviewed report done by Bruce Lipke and Chad Oliver on what the savings is. And I should say, some of these Forest University people are pro-timber. I don't agree that we could run the world on a 40-year clear cut and save all the carbon, because forests are done for other reasons too. We have forests not just for that. So do discount when they get into that pro. So don't get me wrong, I work to save our sawmill every day. In fact, I was with them today, trying to make sure that we do things right and environmentally right. There's a balance there that you've got to reach. It's not one or the other. And nobody's wrong, I don't think. It's just some people, we get different views and down different roads, but we need to make sure you've got, but the point is, what does that cross-laminated timber do for carbon savings? And how can it be used in an environmental friendly manner and stuff. So keep that in mind as you read that paper. I also wrote a paper and shared it with Alan. It's not going anywhere. That outlines all this stuff as an economic savings. What are those things we can do in carbon savings? Just a one-pager on the forest fires, cross-laminated timber, and renewable energy. And the other thing is, in 2007, our legislators, as you know, are always wise and know all. They passed the federal law, the 2007 Independent Energy and Security Act. And within that law, it says any biomass off federal lands is not renewable energy. So you cannot get your RINs, your renewable energy credits, when you're building a plant for them, if your material's coming off federal lands. Now, if it's coming off private lands, you step over here and you just went across the border, now you can do it. It might be the same log here and there. But so anyway, we are proposing, and Wyden's going to work on, is working with us right now on a 10-year pilot to show, particularly, and I want to say, every forest does not sequester carbon the same way. And every forest does not need protected from forest fires. The Olympic National Forest has a 500-year fire regime. Unlikely. We have a 25-year fire regime. And we've got fire class 3 forest all over the way, which means it will, when it burns, we've done 2 in the last 10 years, 200,000 acre fires, it burns everything. And it burns hotter than normal, melts the soil. It's just disastrous. It's not what was naturally before man came and messed with it and stuff. So just remember that, every forest. The oakwood bottoms in Illinois don't need thinning and don't need to be burned in a biomass plant. I mean, so you got to think that rational side that, which I don't think we get anymore. It's always one thing for everything that they make rules on. So we're trying to prove that the sides, like from here clear over to the east side, clear over to Montana and down to Arizona, where these very high prone forests exist, that this is an area that they should consider. So we're preparing a legislation for a 10-year pilot to do that. And then record all the stuff that you'll see in the California deal. How much emissions were there from putting it in a container, et cetera, that kind of thing. Okay. And then that economic study is in there also that I told you about, the PhD economist Gardner did for us. On that is also making energy a workbook for you. If you want to know the type of energies, you can go in there and there's methodologies to go through to tell you if you have enough solar, enough wind, and that gives you a general idea. You've got to be site specific when you actually start doing plants and going out. But it takes you through all that kind of stuff. And that's also on that flash drive. And then there's a planning book that Northwest Seed did for the tribes in Washington. That's an excellent planning book. And then there's the Oregon Department of Energy's Community Planning Tool Book. I got words mixed up there when I did that, see? On it. And there's Solarized Guidebook on that flash drive. So that if your community's interested, and we've been going to communities presenting these type programs with a host of different speakers. And this is some of the stuff that they get. But each drive that we go to each community, we give the whole audience one. It's tailored to that community. Like when we were in John Day doing that workshop, they were highly interested in biomass. They just had a 100,000 acre fire from an overcrowded forest and lost 50 plus homes and stuff like that. So they wanted to know how we're going to thin out our forest and stop this fire stuff. So we tailored our workshop to the community's needs. We did the same at Talent, the same at Hood River, and the end of next month we'll be going to Klamath Falls, and then Dufur, and then Douglas County. And I'm not sure exactly where yet. Then that's a test pilot to whether these should be done throughout the state. And those communities applied for us to come there and supplied some funds for us to get there. So, but that's the stuff that's on there that I wanted to bring to share. Wished I had one for everybody in the community. We didn't have, or everyone in the audience, but we didn't have that many on hand right now. There's a bill in the legislature, well, no, it's not. It will be introduced before opening on February 1st. It's LC 42. And it says, and the Pacific Power and Portland General Electric have agreed to this bill. It will raise the portfolio standards for the state of Oregon that they will displace by in 40 years, 50% of the coal energy coming into the state. Now, the sad thing about that bill, as it's written right now, is it doesn't say where that energy has to come from. It doesn't say it has to come from Oregon. So it could come from wind in Wyoming or anywhere. There is an amendment that's drafted by the Renewable Energy Community, Oregon Renewable Energy Committee, I think it is. No, that's wrong. I've got it on my drive. I don't remember. And the Association of Oregon Counties that will amend that by the 40 years up, that I think it's either 12 or 18% will be produced in the state of Oregon. We would be making a big, and I think that's way low. But being politics, they know what they might get through and might not. It's better than zero. But we don't want to miss the opportunity to have Oregon head. We only have one coal plant that's being phased out. 50% of our energy in this state comes from coal. It comes from Wyoming. And all those plants have to be upgraded. And as ratepayers, we're going to pay for those upgrades in Wyoming. And I'll be flat, I think that's stupid. We need to invest those same dollars to upgrade those coal plants to build renewable energy plants in our state and create a new economy. Times have changed. I think that's so hard for, well, people my age. That, we are changing. And we can't just look at how the things were done in the past. We've got to look at what the future's going to be. And I'm a believer that renewable energy is part of that big future, part of our national security. There will be a day you'll be able to isolate your communities off the grid in a national emergency. That day's coming. And there's some people out there really working on that. So those type of things, I think we need to look to that future. And I'd like to close, and I want to answer any questions you have. I'm going to make sure I did it. I'll always leave Margaret Mead's quote up there about what people can do as a group, what a small group can change the world. I've had this on my wall in different businesses and different places I've worked for 40 or 50 years now. And I've always believed that. It is a small group of people that really make a difference in this world. It's like the group you got right here. You will make that difference. I think particularly in our fractured political climate today in this country, I think it's these types of groups that can do that. But anyway, that's a raw speech. I was going to conclude with one other thing. That's the other thing about getting this age, isn't it? Just sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. But anyway, it is, the future that we can have with renewables in the state and be a leader. We're well on our way. And every community, I think, can benefit from two or more of the things I've talked about in renewable energies and implementing. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. I have a good friend that's a congressman. One time Jim says, we're not going to promote this renewable energy stuff. It doesn't need all these subsidies. And I go, I'm so glad you said that. I've got a 2007 GAO report, General Accounting Office report, that shows that the fossil fuel energy industry gets $13 billion a year, has since 1970. And we get 3. You're going to raise us to 17 billion or 13 billion? He doesn't like that. But anyway, don't let them fool you. I sometimes wish it was illegal. But even if it's not, everything that's new and started in this country, government that used to give a helping hand and then get out. And I believe, I don't see anything wrong with that. And we just need to build this future. We need to be the ones directing the politicians how to do that, because they don't seem to agree on anything in D.C. So that's what I had for you. Hope it was worth it, and I enjoy it. I enjoyed your conference this year. You do a great job. You're on the right track. You really are. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Really appreciate it. One of the things I like, this is the second time I've heard Jim give this kind of a talk, is that he's very honest. He tells it like he sees it, and he's willing always to listen to other people's point of view. And I've seen that in Jim. I really enjoyed that. So, do we have any questions for Jim? I'm going to, if you don't have any, I'll ask one, but any questions? Okay, go for it.
Okay, you talked about this.
Can you stand up, please?
Sure. You talked about like having over 100 megawatts of export power. I'm not as familiar with Lake County. Did they have you already had the infrastructure for getting that power out? Was it part of the military base or some other thing?
One part of that, but we've got a major line, Pacific Power Line, going through that goes to California that has that type of capacity. Now, another shame, I think, is whenever you're looking at exporting power, you got to go have an interconnect study done by the power company. And those can cost $150,000 to $300,000. Now, it seems to me, once you know the capacity of the line and what you got on it, you'll always know that. But when we did the biomass plant, we went through that, so we knew what the megawatt capacity was at that time, so we know we have that kind of capacity on that line. And then the 220 kV lines that come out of the military base are added capacity. So we knew those things. There is a restriction out there. Some communities can't do this because of the capacity of the lines going out. So, and that's something you got to look at in every community. And usually the Department of Energy can help you figure that out to a reasonable enough level. You're still going to eventually have to pay for that interconnect study and get an agreement with whoever owns the line. So, yeah.
Oh, and a follow-on. Do you then have to negotiate with the power companies on how much they're willing to pay you for this power?
Yes, you also need a power purchase agreement. That's why the biomass plant, they made a very big error. Before they passed the bill in California, they could have had a power purchase agreement. And they were just building away and forgot about that. Well, and they couldn't get that anymore because of the law in California. Yeah, you have to negotiate a power purchase agreement. If you're under 10 megawatts, you're under PURPA, under the Public Utility Commission's rulings, PURPA, and they have to accept that at the forego, what's it called? Well, anyway, it's a study of the existing rate. They don't have to pay more than what the existing rate for it is, but they have to pay you to put it out if it's 10 megawatts or less. Or they're supposed to have to pay you, or you wind up in court like the one that I showed you on the geothermal. And I don't know why that is, but yeah.
Any other? Louise?
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on the difference between rooftop solar en masse versus solar park? Say solar, a big installation on top of large buildings that have big roofs.
Glad you brought that up. You
Good.
know, last year, the legislature passed a renewable energy solar cooperative bill, and that's being formed, solar being one of the majors, but any renewable can do this. So any municipal building can have solar put on it, and then the community can invest up to $1,000 each to help pay for that, and they get a return. And they're going through all the security rules and all that right now on it. But it's not going to be a huge return, but it could be like 2.5% return on your investment. So town's going to do one on their new community building. And that's how they're going to get it done. And let the community invest in it. So rooftops are great, but many places you may have shade and other things that impact that. So a community solar, and in the new bill, there's a community solar on the renewable portfolio standards. And I'm trying to figure out what it means. I don't always understand legal language, the bill language.
Is that a new bill?
Yeah, this is the one that's going to be introduced by February 1st. That will have community solar in it. So, like Lakeview sits up next to a mountain, so it's shaded, and the sun is on the east side, you know, if you know Lakeview. Well, there's a park outside of town with 250 meters when they built the pipeline. I think that's my stomach. And so if you could put a meter out there and offset your meter to that meter, what a great benefit that would be. And those are some of the new things we need to be thinking about, because then that really makes sense. And those are called, Colorado has them in several other states, community solar systems. They call them solar gardens. And so you can offset your utility. They have to pay you, which is in this new bill. They'll have to pay you up to the amount you use, I think. You know, so you could get it net zero. They're not going to pay you for the excess, I don't think. But I'm still trying to get somebody to help me with that language, see if that's, I'm interpreting it correctly. So, but did that answer your question?
I don't understand what a solar garden is. What do you
Solar
mean
garden
by
would be,
offset?
a solar garden is to go out and take a plot of land and put a bunch of solar panels up,
Okay.
and you put a meter there. And then your meter at your home is hooked to that meter. It's all done by computer. And so you offset your electricity, let's say you're on electric or hydro or whatever, over here, it will offset, your solar will offset that. And they can take track of what you produce, and they gotta pay you, give you credit for that amount of electricity that you produced and not used. Does that help?
Sort of.
Or, okay. Have to think how better to say that.
Do they put up any solar installations in parking lots so that you can have some shade in hot weather?
They've done that in like, I've seen them done in apartment buildings and stuff, so you park your car underneath the solar panel. Yeah, that's doable too.
They're doing that at the airport. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first, thank you. You've proven a lot of these things can work. Are you seeing a transition from a nonprofit funding towards, towards the community investment and state investment in these projects? Because we all know it's possible, and you've proven it. So are you seeing a transition away from this nonprofit small project status to either private or community funding throughout the state?
On the larger scale, definitely. On the smaller scale, that's, since the law is this new for the community to get involved in the way I just explained with financing it, that's yet to happen, but it's going to happen. I believe that's the trend. Yeah, I think you'll see more and more of that.
Do we have any more questions before I ask mine? Helga?
What would prevent the centralized power company from monopolizing control of the renewable energy sources and giving costs?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. What would prevent the
Like Pacific Power or
the power company from monopolizing energy and rigging prices?
if they can invest in the development of it, then
I think the answer to that and the guidance over that is the Public Utility Commission, PUC. They have, for any rate increases, anything that they do, they have to go before them. They get some favorable rulings sometimes. It's not always on the user side, so sometimes the company side, but they do have to go before them. That's I think the balance of power that helps with that.
I'm not sure I followed where that question came from. I think you're referring to a solar installation that the power company would build, or that the community would build?
if the power company would go and do it instead of the community,
Okay.
Well, there are power company, not Pacific Power, those, they're investors. They're like Obsidian Renewable Energy. And, so they go in and they make a deal with Pacific Power to build a plant, and they get the agreement on what they're going to get paid if they build that plant, etc. So, yes.
Yeah, but the other side of that I see is if you do it on your own, or you get your community together and do it, the power companies out of
True.
they can't take over what you've been built and are generating.
I hope you're right.
Now, what was that? What did he say?
He said that if you build it yourself, they can't take it over.
Yeah.
But you got to have some place to go with the power. Now, if you're off-grid, which we do a lot of off-grid homes, because we do have places that you can, cost you $40,000 to $60,000 to get electric line to your home. You can go off-grid, you don't need to be on the grid to do that. We can design a solar system, ground source heat pump, you're set. So, those are off-grid type things. But if you're on a grid system, like we've got one that's solar, but is on the grid. The grid's the backup. Then they're subject to the grid and whatever rulings the POC and the public utilities come out with.
Yeah, and a lot of states are starting to, Arizona started this, where they charge people an additional fee to have solar on their house, just for being connected to the grid. So those of us are hopeful for like, the Tesla battery, to where it may make it possible for, a simpler off-grid, off-line structure.
There's places like Arizona where enough have gone on homes that it's hurting the bottom line of the utilities, and they're fighting back. And that's going to be a battle, there's no doubt about it. Like I said, I really see, I don't know if it'll be my lifetime. I'll see the time when the community's going to use grid. I really do. I think that's totally possible. Like we got the technology today, it's just, how do we get there? But and I look back, and I look, who would have ever dreamt there would never be film in a camera? Times change, so maybe we won't need a grid someday, and that'll be the change too.
I'm going to talk about LC 42 in relation to LC 48, which is the healthy climate bill at the moment. My question, if anybody else has a question, we'll do that first, and then I'll do mine. Anybody else have a question? Okay. My question, one of the things we were excited about Jim's coming here to talk about was what's happening in Lakeview, but the other side of the question, and Jim has mentioned that he's been traveling around various places in Oregon, particularly talking to communities about this whole idea of renewable energy. So my question is the next question, the Lakeview County and beyond. If you were looking at our community here, which is different from Lakeview, of course, what of the array of renewable energy ideas that you have put together would you be recommending, as you did when you went to Talent and as you go various places? What would you be looking to recommend to a community like this that we should be looking at as a first step towards moving away from fossil fuel? Is that too difficult a question?
Yeah. I think it's important to go through a planning process and get the community together with your community leaders and the people in there and sit down and go through one of these plans and outline where you go. And that workbook would help you identify those. Now, you heard me say right off the bat, I don't see why every school is not doing ground source heat pumps or something, or either that or small pellets. You take your small fuels from the forest and all of a sudden you could have a pellet company making pellets if you had enough schools on these small boilers, small pellet boilers and stuff. So those ideas, I think, are all doable. What exactly fits your community, I just don't have that crystal ball. But I would go through that process to help you get there. And this, what we're doing right now is a pilot, and it's not going to be Lake County that leads it afterwards. They asked us to take charge to do these 6 that we're doing, is through some private funders and the state, should this be offered to every community that wants to look at this? And my organization is Lake County. And my commissioners, my board reminds me, I need to work as much in Lake County as I do outside sometimes. And I agree with that. But I hope that these pilots will show that there is that need and communities are interested, and that somebody to pick it up that's a regional, like Sustainable Northwest. And they're part of our team. So that'd be type of regional organization that would be ideal. But there's others too.